My belief is that you should always come out of a strength as a triathlete. You should come out of strength feeling better than when you went in. You shouldn't come out feeling really, really tired. It should be complementary to everything else that you do in the swim, bike, and run.
All right, welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and today, I'm excited to bring back a regular guest and one of the sharpest minds in sports science, Dr. Dan Plews. He's a sports physiologist, a coach to champions, one hell of an athlete himself, and the brain behind Endura IQ. We've had some incredible discussions in the past, and I always love having him back. Never easy coordinating times. He's in New Zealand and I'm in Florida, but we're making it happen again. So Dan, welcome back, mate. Thanks for joining me. How are you, mate?
I'm really good. Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me back on. It's always a pleasure being on your podcast. So I think I actually told my wife that I was coming back on. She went, "Wow, you haven't spoken to Greg in ages." And I went, "Yeah, it must be a year. It must be a year or so, or maybe a bit more." But
no, I think it was last October, right after you went that 756.
So there you go. It will be almost a year ago.
Yep. And I have referenced you so many times because I remember you saying in that episode, I think I asked you a question like, how did you even make this happen with work and family and blah, blah, blah. And you said, I read this book, Die With Zero, and it changed my perception on that. Look, if you want to go do something, do it while you can. And I have referenced that book and you quoting that book to me so many times on this show since then.
It's very good.
Yeah, it is good.
It's a very good book. Like I don't think it gives anything that's like groundbreaking, but it's a nice. I think if you don't really think about it in that way, where you do what you can whilst you can, you don't really. It's easy to get trapped in the day to day and not pursue what you really want to do. So anyone, I would do recommend that book.
Yeah.
Sure.
But was that your last? Have you done a triathlon since? Because I know you were pivoting and moving into getting a bit stronger, building up. Yeah.
No, I was true to my word. Even though there were many doubters, actually. That was my last triathlon. I've actually still have a qualification slot, and I paid for the Taupo 70.3 World Champs, and I get an email about that quite regularly telling me to complete my registration, and every time it comes in I look at it and I go but I don't know. I'm not gonna bother, because we've got a lot of athletes from Endura IQ who are racing in Taupo, so I really want to be there for them, for the athletes, because it gets hard to look after the athletes when you're racing yourself.
So
of course. We'll have a big crew there. We've also got a really big crew in Kona, so I'm heading out there for the race as well. We've got a little bit of a training camp coming up in September as well with some of my one-on-one age groupers. So that's going to be, it's really good. We've got more. I think we got, in terms of one-on-ones, I think nearly every single one of my one-on-ones has qualified for Kona this year, which has been a bit of a pretty good. And so we have a really big contingency of athletes out there across all our Endura IQ coaches and a squad member. So it's going to be pretty big.
Massive congrats, mate, and to everybody you've got on your team. But you personally, though, I can't imagine. The last I saw you'd put on, you were like me. I went from like a 70 kilogram triathlete and I think I'm over 80 kilograms now. I'd love to say it's all muscle, but it's. I think no, it's not. I've got a little dad bod happening, but it's not terrible. But mate, you just raced though Hyrox. Tell us about that in Brisbane, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so last time we spoke, I was going through. I could classify as bodybuilding. I was really doing proper bodybuilding. I was eating a lot, and really trying to bulk. And so I went from 74 kilos to 89 kilos.
15 kg. For American listeners, times that by 15 by 2.2. So what are we looking at? 33 pounds or something. Yeah. Wow.
So I did that, and I have to say I enjoyed that phase of just like bodybuilding and lifting weights, but I didn't feel good. I didn't feel that great, and I kind of missed like the bit of that cardiorespiratory fitness. And then my brother did a Hyrox, and he was like, "Oh, you should give it a go. You should try it." So basically from there, I was doing a cycling tour in the Dolomites in the Italian Alps, in I think it was June, July time with my brother and my dad. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to get in. My dad's 72, so I didn't have to be in massive shape. But, you kind of still want to enjoy it. And it's not that much fun carrying 89 kilos over Italian Alps and, the Stelvio and all that. So I ended up doing a little bit more cycling, a little bit more running. And then because I entered the Hyrox in Brisbane, and then, but for those who don't know, Hyrox is...
Yeah, let's interrupt and explain that. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's a 1 kilometer run followed by a fitness station. So you do a 1 kilometer run, and then you do 1,000 meters on the ski erg, a 1 kilometer run, 100 meters of 50 meters of sled push, 1 kilometer run, 50 meters of sled pull, 1 kilometer run, 80 meters of burpee broad jumps, 1 kilometer run, 1,000 meters on the ski erg, 1 kilometer run, 200 meters as a farmer's carrying 23 kgs in your hand,
wow.
A 1 kilometer run, and then it's 100 meters of walking lunges with 20 or 30 kg on your back, and then 1 kilometer run, and then 100 wall balls. So it's becoming very popular because it's a bit like CrossFit. It's very much tilted towards aerobic fitness more. So you've got to be a good runner, you've got to be aerobically fit. But it's also movements that are much simpler. So the barrier to entry is really low. Whereas if you look at something like CrossFit, you have to have a certain level of skill with the Olympic lifts that is quite difficult to do. And it appealed to me because it's that combination of, functional movements. You have to be strong, and you have to be able to, you still have to be quite fit. And, the best guys in the world, guys and girls in the world, like I can talk to the guys at least, they're like 90 kilo dudes, and they're running under 16 minutes for a 5K.
Wow.
So it's quite, and then the deadlifting, 200 kilos and whatnot. So it's quite a very nice combination. But obviously with that, when you're 89 kilos, the running wasn't feeling that great. Even for me, I didn't like it that much.
No, it's awful to go running when you put on the weight, isn't it? Oh,
yeah, brutal. Exactly. So I did, fortunately all the cycling that I did in Italy really helped me drop a lot of weight. So I did, so I went back, so now I'm back down to 82, 83,
okay.
Which is kind of, I can run quite well with that, with the strength and a bit more size, which I enjoy. My strength numbers from when I was doing the bodybuilding, like in terms of bench press and stuff like that haven't actually gone down even when I've lost that weight. So that's been good.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's a vanity component. Come on, looking in the mirror and go, oh, look at that.
Maybe a little bit, yeah, exactly.
I love it. I have a question actually from two people that and Beth McKenzie. She wrote in and said, "Is Hyrox the next frontier for endurance athletes and retired triathletes?" What do you think? You agree with her on that statement, or what do you think?
I do. I do think it's the next frontier because it's just so easy. One of the things that I really like about it is the training's very versatile. It's very interesting. There's a lot of different things to do. Like there's so many different exercises you can do, so many things you can train, so many things you can practice. And you do 2 hours a day, and 2 hours is a lot of training in Hyrox. Whereas it's just when you're doing Ironman, the training is a little bit, it's a lot, right? So,
of course, yeah.
So I did Brisbane, and I did.
How'd you go? How'd you go? Tell me the result. I couldn't find results.
So the first race I did was so they have two different categories. They have the open weights and they have the pro weights. So from the first one, I just did the open weights, which is a slightly lighter in the weight. So like walking lunges, you do 20 kgs on your back rather than 30 kgs on your back, for example. And the sleds are a bit lighter. So and I was I'll tell you how I did, and I'll tell you more of a story after that as well. But I came third overall, and I won my age group, and I qualified for the world champs.
Wow!
So waiting to find out where the world champs is. It's either going to be, I've heard rumors it'll be somewhere in America. I'm hoping it's going to be somewhere like California for New Zealand.
I hope it's in Florida, then I got to see you.
Yeah, exactly. That could be a win too. But actually when I did the race, I was I woke up in the morning, and you know how when you know, night before a race, you sometimes don't sleep that well. But I woke up that morning, and that night I didn't sleep well at all. But I felt like it was more than just a race, like pre-race sleep. So I kind of woke up and I was like, I looked at my HRV and it wasn't good at all. It was like in the red, like very, very low.
What was it?
I think it was like 35, where it's usually in the hundreds.
Oh, wow.
35 RMSSD, where it's usually in the hundreds. And my resting heart rate was up 8 beats. So I was like, not feeling that good. I'm not feeling that great, but I tried to ignore it. So I went to the race venue and I was warming up, and by all accounts, things were looking okay. You know, I was like doing a warm up on the bike. I was looking at my heart rate, and I was like, okay, that's I think I can get through this. So took a bit of caffeine, took a bit of paracetamol, and away I went. And honestly, I did the race, but I can't actually really remember much of the race, to be honest. It was a little bit of a blur. But I finished the race, and I was talking with my friend Lewis to Beth and Luke, actually.
Yeah.
You know, win. Yeah. I was, because they both raced, and I was just talking with them, and I was like shivering, like really badly shivering, total full body shivers. And I said to my friend, I said, I've got to go and sit outside. I'm just so cold. So I went outside in the Brisbane sun, and I sat outside with like a hoodie on in the sun. And then my friend came out and he went, "Well, you do not look good." So I took myself to the medical tent, and I was like there, sat in the medical tent shivering, and my temperature was 39.5 degrees.
Oh, wow. You had a massive temperature.
Yeah. So it turned out, so then I was in Brisbane and I had to get home the next day, and it turned out I had influenza. So did the race with influenza, and last week, that's why I messaged you last week, because obviously
we were meant to record last week, everybody, and he's like, I think I tried to call you. You know, I got this text back going, I can't move.
Honestly, Greg, I'm 42 years old, and I've never been that sick in my life. I was literally horizontal for 4 days. It was crazy. Yeah. So hopefully next time, if I'm actually well, I might go a little bit better.
Or sometimes, I don't know. There's something about, I remember getting sick. I think it was at LA Triathlon once. Had the exact same thing you're talking about. And I remember calling Laura. She wasn't there, and I was just, I don't think I can race. And she's like, look, just go do the race. I was like, I just feel a bit average. And I went and raced, and I actually had a really good race. It was like it was almost like the last hurrah. And then I fully, exactly like you, just in a heap for 4 or 5 days. And it was man flu for everybody listening, which obviously is really horrific.
Really bad.
Really bad. But yeah, mate, that's pretty cool though. And I did get a note from Nikki Thompson as well, Simon Thompson's wife, and she was also asking if you enjoyed Hyrox. So there was a real community there of retired triathletes, to what Beth was saying, and endurance athletes that all turned up. The first time I heard about Hyrox was actually Sebastian Kinley on this show, and he was talking to me about it and saying he wants to join me in a team. I'm like, Sebi, you might have missed me on that one, buddy. But we'll move on in a sec, but how do you train for it? Because I can't find a place to do sledding and stuff like that in Florida. Like, are you building your own stuff, or is it?
Yeah, I've kitted out a lot of my gym. I mean, when I finished triathlon, I sold a lot of my TT bikes and everything. So then I kind of put that money into a lot of equipment. I have a sled in my garage, but I don't have that much space. That's my issue.
So you're going like 5 meters backwards and forwards.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I've been doing at the moment. I actually went to Club Santa when I was overseas, and that was in Club Santa in Lanzarote is fully set up for Hyrox. So that was brilliant, because I actually got to feel the weight of the sleds and really know what it was about. But I can do a full Hyrox in my gym. The sled pull and push is not possible, isn't that great. But I actually was just talking to someone here this morning, and I'm trying to buy like a mat that I can roll up and roll out, that I can roll out my gym onto the driveway, and it'll come all the way out.
Yes.
And then I'll get another 5 meters at least. Then.
Yeah.
So then I should be good. But you can still do other movements that are
true, but there's nothing like training specifically.
Nothing quite like it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found in the race was I got onto so you kind of look at where you place in terms of the normal distribution. So Hyrox do a great job of the analysis, and they'll look at where you place in all of the exercises in terms of the distribution, so you can see where you need to work on. So obviously my running was really good. My running was like, I think I averaged 3:37 for all of them. It's surprisingly slow. The runs are surprisingly slow. You think that those exercise stations won't slow you down much, but they slow you down a lot. Actually,
I'd be happy with a 3:37 these days. But where are you running? You're just running inside a stadium or something?
Yeah, you're running inside in circles pretty much. So it was 2 laps.
Yeah.
But it was. But my sled pull was really not great. It was really poor. So my burpee broad jumps were pretty average too. So I think my walking lunges, burpee broad jumps, and sled pull were probably my worst ones. They weren't super bad, but it shows where I need to do.
Yeah.
Where I need to do.
I wonder, did the other triathletes have similar? Like, I'm wondering for people that have done triathlete their whole lives, because a lot listening, and me included, we've all done swim, bike, running. Obviously, we all would have the running a bit better than most people that haven't run. But I think many are similar. I think, but some are better at burpee broad jumps than me. But I think my technique wasn't that great. Yeah. So I think I can definitely improve on that. But when I go to the world champs, you go pro weights. So I've definitely got, if I do it, I have a lot of work to do, because the jump up in weights is quite high. And I quite like that, because I think it really, when you start doing the pro weights for the worlds, it really does turn it into quite a hybrid event. You do have to be very strong. Yeah, it moves from just being a running, well, not just, obviously the other thing.
Yeah, I feel like the open weight is, you can get away with being a good runner and relatively strong, whereas when you go into the pro weights, it is totally different.
Gotcha. And you would have done all right at the rowing too. You've spent a lot of time around rowing.
So the rowing and the ski erg were my best. Yeah, I was really good on the ski erg as well.
Which are both cardio as well. So, I mean, and
I'm quite tall. I've got long arms. Yeah. So, it's I got a lot of reach, which is good. And the rowing, was fine as well. And I was pretty good at the wall balls as well, actually.
I want to look into this. So, anybody in South Florida, we just got a brand new Lifetime gym here in Palm Beach Gardens, which is awesome. But I wrote them and said, hey, we need a sledge and we need all this stuff. And they weren't very receptive. So Lifetime, if you're listening, we need to redo the gym out here to have Hyrox Center put in it.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, I love it because it's I always need a physical goal, and that's one of the things about doing body, like just trying to get big muscles, right? It's not tangible enough in terms of a line in the sand, in terms of a goal, and it's what you're trying to achieve. I really like it.
I get it. It's hard to train for health.
It's very hard. It's very hard.
You need to be training with something that scares you a little bit, that gets you out of bed.
And the great thing is about Hyrox is that you can, it's so nice when you do an Ironman, right? You go and run 20K, and it's like, oh well, that wasn't even half of the distance I've got to race.
Yeah, for sure.
You can go out and run a 10K, and you go, oh, I've just run over the distance I have to race. I don't anymore. I really don't do much long running, because I figured, well, I've spent my whole life doing.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir. You're preaching to the choir.
I just don't need to do it anymore. I've done so much of it. So the longest run I'll do now is an hour 15 tops.
Yeah.
I just don't feel I need to do it. So
depends on where you are in the world. So Laura and I, we just had 7 weeks back in Australia, 2 weeks in Noosa, and it was. You want to go run the headlands every morning in Noosa National Park. And we went down to Sydney for 5 weeks and ran around the headlands around Sydney. And every morning I just want to get up and run down around the harbour. And it's just so magnificent. And then I haven't run since we got back. It's like,
there you go.
And it's like I've played tennis. It's your environment.
The thing, isn't it?
It is. It's your environment. Yeah.
Important. Yeah.
But before we move on again, Olympics, I want to just spend a couple of minutes. Were you able to watch any of it? Any highlights? Did you enjoy the Olympics?
Yeah, I love the Olympics. I mean, we have a rule in our house. It's like we have limitations on screen time, apart from when the Olympics is on. There's no limitations on screen time, and if you want to watch it, you can watch as much of the Olympics as you possibly can.
I love it.
We have it on pretty much continuously. I was away overseas for the first week, so I didn't see as much. But as soon as I got back to New Zealand, it was on.
But did you have any rowers or kayakers this time around? I mean, you've been involved so much.
I still work with the women's kayak program,
and they got a gold, didn't they?
We got 3 golds.
Excuse me.
Yeah, 3 golds. So
congrats.
We won the women's K4, women's K2 500, and the women's K1 500. I mean, Dame Lisa Carrington was in all those boats. But,
wow.
I mean, it was a big thing, like because the K4, women's K4 is kind of like the blue ribbon event of
course,
women's kayak. So and the coach Gordon Walker he's been. I mean, I've known him for years and years. I mean, he's one of the first coaches I ever started working with when I first moved to New Zealand back in 2010. He actually used to coach Cameron Brown. He's a bit of an avid triathlete, he, I know that's something he's been chasing for a very long time, the K4 kind of win, and
they got it.
And they got it. So so it was.
That's huge. Well done to Team New Zealand on that one. And I'm sorry, there's so many countries you got to watch during the Olympics, and I'm kind of an Australian / American these days.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's always good. I mean, even in the rowing, I don't work with them anymore, but it's nice that there's still a lot of rowers like Emma Tweed got a silver medal who was there when I was working with rowing, and the one of the girls in the K in the women's double was there when I was at rowing. So it's nice to kind of see these people who you actually have a relationship with. Like also Hayden, I know Hayden. He called me the day after the race and talked to me. It's so special. I mean, when Hayden called me the day after the race, I was pretty flattered, to be honest. It's quite.
He's such a good man. Hayden.
Yeah,
honestly, little segue. We've been trying to get our recording together. It'll come next week, everybody that's listening. But last week we had some technical difficulties. We just couldn't hear him. Blah 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 blah. And this is, he's just got second at the Boston Super Try, and then I said, well, why don't we wait till after Chicago? And he was even going to do it. He wanted to do it the day before his race in Chicago. I said, no, focus on your race. And then he goes and wins Chicago.
He's so. I mean, I'm having worked with a lot of athletes who perform nowhere near as well as him, obviously, consistently, who are so highly strung before races and so tense, whereas he's just like. He's so relaxed, and there has to be something to that.
He loves the game. He loves the game. He's playing.
He's such a consistent performer, whereas I know athletes who are just a nightmare to be around before the race, and they're often their own worst enemy, and that's those athletes are often very frustrating as a coach because you look, everything's going well in training, and then it comes to race day, and it's just a complete explosion.
I get it.
And you can't do anything about it. In the end of the day, you can't do that. It's so hard. Is it working? I find that psychological side quite hard.
Yeah, well, it is. Well, what did you think of Hayden's performance at the Olympics?
Yeah, I said to, and I actually chatted with Brad Beer after. I said, just keep an eye on Hayden after, because I knew Brad was there, and I said, just keep an eye on him because I'm sure he's happy now, but he's probably going to reflect on this in a week, and he's going to be pretty down and disappointed. And I was disappointed for him, to be honest, because I think he had it in the bag and just is what it is. But I mean, he still did amazing, of course, and silver medal. But I think
no. It's tough to get past like that towards
when
the finish
you're so
line.
close, right?
Yeah.
He'll be back.
I've had it once or twice in my tire career, and you never forget them. They hurt a lot. You go, oh.
Mm.
And I think
especially on that scale, it's as big as it gets.
Oh,
right?
It's as big as it gets, mate.
The difference between an Olympic gold and an Olympic silver medal is not the same.
Yeah, but I think it's like I was talking to Chris McCormack last week, and just he has to know that we all look at him as such a warrior for going for it like he did, and we can go, he lost a little bit too much in the swim, or once he caught up on the bike, he went to the front too early, and then got off the bike in transition, lost 5 seconds in transition. Boom. We can nail down all the tiny little bits and pieces, but at the end of the day, he ran all the way back up to Alex Yee, sat there for a fraction, and then was like, I'm going, and knew that he had to go because Alex has had his measure in the sprint. Made it happen, got out to 15, 17 seconds, and I honestly probably just ran out of steam that last mile.
Hayden said to me that he overheated a little bit.
Yeah, he did. So but then he managed it. But he managed it and still got second. Because how many people have you seen that overheat and then collapse and don't even finish? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, retrospectively, there's so many things that he'll probably look back on.
I know.
He could have done better, but
But that's sport, isn't it? That's sport.
He's just such. I don't know anyone who doesn't like Hayden. Like, he's such a popular athlete, and I'm very fortunate to have him on, on the WhatsApp and be able to chat to him and be, I'd say a friend, and it's pretty awesome that he, he's just great. So
well said, mate. And you're right. I remember being down in Australia, not this trip, but this trip before, and there was a whole group of us, and we were just having a picnic on the, at Noosa there, and I think there was Pete Jacobs and Belinda Granger and a whole bunch of us, and Hayden came up, and everybody lit up, and everybody there said, "Oh yeah, I've sent Hayden a direct message on Instagram, and he got back to me." And and everybody there was like, and he got back to me an hour before his race in Hamburg, or
that's what he's like.
Everybody had a story of Hayden Wild getting back to them, and everybody felt like because we're fans, right? We're fans, and everybody felt like $1,000,000 because this guy had taken a moment to just quickly write back and say, "Thanks, how you doing?" I was like, so big shout out, Hayden.
He's a man.
Yeah, but anything else stand out for you at the Olympics?
What other events did I thought the Americans in the running were just like next level.
Oh, okay. That 1,500.
They won just about every. I think they were podiumed in just about every single running event almost.
Yeah.
Especially on the male side.
Yeah.
So that was pretty awesome. It's disappointing that New Zealand didn't get any medals in the pool. It always astounds me, like, New Zealand got 0 medals in the pool, whereas Australia obviously is just across it's not that far away, and you got like 20.
It's a little cultural difference, though. Just look at your rugby. Yeah. Just look at your rugby, and then you'll understand why we do well at swimming. It's like,
yeah.
No, yeah.
So that was a bit, but yeah, I loved it all.
Same, mate, same. Yeah. But listen, tell me, you've been. How's everything at Endure IQ? I'm getting you brew up emails, which I love, by the way. If people aren't subscribing, I seriously mean this. I'm not just doing it because Dan's on the call here, but you do such a good job. In the brew up, it basically has, you have a suggested book, or you have equipment or a podcast you should listen to, or workouts, and there's just so much. It's just you basically talking to me and say, Greg, I kind of suggest you have a check these things out. So anybody who wants to sign up for that brew up. But you also just told me you've just started a new thing. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So as part of anyone who follows like especially the strength and conditioning and weight training side, there's a few like monthly magazines that really focus in the strength space. Whatever it is in terms of building muscles, all the latest research. But no one was really doing that in the endurance space. And as you know, like, if you want to keep up to date with the latest research, one is it's very time consuming to do. And two is often many coaches, students, athletes, they don't have the access to the journals, right? They don't have the access to actually really get into them and look at them properly. So the TSS, it's called the TSS, and it's a monthly magazine.
Training Science Summaries.
Training Science Summaries. And basically, we summarize 10 papers, mostly new. Sometimes we get some classics in there as well, and summarize the latest and greatest research of 10 papers. And then we try to put some practical application on it. So it's just a great way for anyone to keep up to date with what's going on in the latest research. Especially as a coach, you really know what's going on. You got your finger on the pulse of anything new. You can be an early adopter as an athlete or a student as well. Obviously, that's pretty good. That's pretty beneficial as well. So yeah, it's a monthly magazine. You can sign up. You can download one for free to check what it's all about. But it comes out every month. It's only $7.50 per month for the magazine. And we summarize the 10 papers, give practical application, and anyone who's into the sports science and wants to be up to date, it's great.
Great. Can you give me some examples of what's come out in this month? Have you got?
What came out in this month? I know we had one in terms of like nicotine and heat adaptation, or heat tolerance. So we did. So it was a paper that looked at, because I don't know if you know about. There's a lot of athletes like chewing nicotine is becoming popular, particularly in cycling.
Really?
So it looked at whether that and it showed basically this paper showed that it was not it did not aid your heat tolerance, so it's something not worth doing. There was another paper that was looking at we had one that was a female athlete looking at the effects of the menstrual cycle. Just another one on that. What else is there? We had one that was in beta alanine, so looking at the effects of beta alanine on high intensity exercise, which was positive. So yeah, it's loads of different things in there, but we always try and keep it relevant to endurance athletes.
Love it. All right, well, sign me up, buddy.
Yeah.
I know you and we do talk offline a fair bit on a whole bunch of different things, but this research side, fascinating, and to have you guys do the heavy lifting, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. Yeah, exactly. When you get, we try to. I mean, it's always what we really try and do is we try and give some practical application from the research, so we have some takeaways. So it's not a simple. This is not simply, this is a summary and like doing an abstract of an abstract. We'll do the abstract, but we'll also reflect on other papers that have found similar things or different things within the same within the summary. And then at the end, we'll have some practical application as to what this actually means. So we did one that I remember one that was last month was on sodium loading, like pre-sodium loading, what that actually means in terms of how much you have to put in your drink and how it will taste and all those sorts of things. So yeah, we try and the aim is like my PhD supervisor always said to me, he said, there's interesting and then there's useful. You can have a lot of research that's interesting, but you want something useful,
actionable steps.
We want something, so we try and get some actionable insights for those people who are reading it, so they can actually go and change their behaviors or try something new or something like that. So that's the way where we try.
I love it, mate. I'm definitely signing up. I'll just go to Endure.
So, yeah, it's me and my former PhD student, who's now a lecturer at the same university as me, AUT University. Who write it together, so we do that together. So yeah,
mate, you've always got something going on, Dan. You don't.
Yeah,
that was good, man.
Well, the other thing, the thing that's taken up most of my time at the moment is I'm writing a HRV book.
Oh, you are? Have you got a publisher and things lined up? How far along?
Yeah, we've got a publisher, Human Kinetics Publishing. So there's four authors. There's me, Marco Altini, who's we're doing the physiology training side of HRV. And then we've got Silviane Lombardi and Emma Mosley, who are doing like the cognitive side of HRV. Brilliant. So so it's been really good because the authors the publishers keep us on track.
Yes.
We've actually got a deadline tomorrow, so we've got 2 more chapters. We're putting in 2 more chapters, and that's been really good. But it's been great, especially as I've had to really go out of my comfort zone, because obviously I know a lot about HRV. With HRV for training and adaptation, but there's things in the book that I know nothing about that we've had to include, like the effects of red light on HRV, the effects of green light on HRV, the effects of pollution on HRV, the effects of the urban setting on HRV.
Fascinating. Yes. All the environmental toxins and all the different energies.
I've had to write about, which has been cool. And also then I read about, I don't know that much about the cognitive and the psychology side of HRV. So I was just reading reviewing a chapter from the authors yesterday, and it was talking about personality traits and how someone who's got higher emotional intelligence, for example, generally has higher HRV, because they're more responsive to people's emotions. It's a fascinating area. So the books, so that's been taking up a lot of my time. I feel like between writing the brew up, the TSS, and this book and everything else, I'm continuously writing at the moment.
It's so good for you though, mate. Just leaning into that, and your curiosity is still keeping sparked. But yes, reading all of that, writing all of that, it's just time consuming. A lot of it's just takes time. I mean, but
it's been really good. So so when the book's published, I mean, it was supposed to be September, but I don't think that's going to be, definitely not happening.
Really looking forward to that. Are you going to do the Audible version for us?
I think I could not do that.
You got a good voice, mate. You got that intelligent British voice. You could easily do an audible.
It's the reading and not fumbling your words.
When I talked to Ali Brownlee after he'd done his book, he gave me the written version to do before it was published. He actually gave me an early copy, and I was bringing him on the show, and I had to read it really quick in 3 days. It was like, and then he said, I'm in the process of doing the audible, and he said, he said you actually just get the hang of it. He says it's quite difficult at first, and I agree. Yeah. I'd be frightened to do it, but
I know I would fumble my words. I fumble my words at the best of times. So like, I'd just
get Morgan Freeman or somebody else to do it for you.
Oh, I know. I don't know who I get to do it, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, our good friend, our mutual friend, Dr. Tommy Wood, I know he's working on his book as well, which I'm looking forward to as well.
He'd be a very good person to read it, actually, because he sounds very intelligent.
Yeah, well, you both do, mate. You're both in the same space.
No, Tommy's got a much posher voice than me, that's for sure.
He does have a bit of the posh voice, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, he sounds much more intelligent. So I'm still, because I grew up in Yorkshire, you see, I have these little Yorkshire twangs that just pop out every now and again.
Yeah, I know, but you've still got the British bonus points. I still feel like you British get 1 or 2 bonus points for the accent.
Qatar, what can I say?
Yeah. Hey, let's move on. And I've got a whole bunch of, I've just started doing this the last few episodes. It's been a lot of fun. And that's asking my listeners on Instagram if they've got any questions, and I put it out just a day before because otherwise it gets too flooded. And I've picked out most of them, and so I just want to run through these, and we can they all are pretty big questions, but for the most part, well, they're big in the sense of topics, so I don't imagine, they're not yes, no. So here we go. Let's start with the first one. I don't know. Do you know Josh Minogue?
Josh Minogue, he won the Open in Hyrox.
Get out! Well, he was one of Australia's greatest surf Ironman athletes, and he listens to the show. And classic. Yeah. Okay, well, he beat me. So okay, so I'm not going to answer his question.
I'm not going to answer your question.
He said you've worked with some of the best endurance athletes on the planet. Who do you see as the toughest, and which group works the hardest?
Ooh.
That's actually pretty good. You go everywhere from America's Cup sailors and the grinders to kayaking and rowing to triathlon and cycling. And
such a good. I don't really know the answer to that.
It's hard to say. It's maybe. Would you say it's more individualized than it is a generic sport, or is it?
Yeah, it's very, very individualized. Like, who's the toughest? I mean, I think I always think like the rowers are definitely. I don't think it depends. I don't think rowers train harder than triathletes, but I think the sport's quite punishing. Like with the rubbing on your hands and out on the water, and I think it's quite a punishing sport generally in terms of what the actual sport involves and the time on the erg and whatnot.
It's a hard word, tough, as well. Like, what does tough actually mean? I feel like it's.
I mean, I even look back at Terenzo. Terenzo was a very tough athlete.
Yeah.
I think about him, and I've just worked with so many of them, like Lisa Carrington, for example, the kayaker. I mean, you don't win 9 Olympic gold medals with. I mean, I don't know whether toughness, but I've never met anyone who is more grounded and competitive intrinsically than her. She's just so motivated to be the best she can be. So it's just, I wouldn't say one sport has someone who's an outstanding. I mean, and then I also think of like Hamish Bond, who, he won 2 gold medals at the Olympics, went over to cycling, won a bronze medal at the Commonwealth Games, went back to the Olympics, won a gold medal at the Olympic 8.
And for rowing. Yeah. Sorry. Yep.
And now he's back, and now he's been the America's Cup. He's on the boat with the America's Cup. I mean, what a career. I mean, what a sporting career. It's absolutely insane. It's like 3 Olympic gold medals, a Commonwealth bronze medal, and then America's Cup sailing. I mean,
that's just unbelievable. He's in the category, there's a whole group of guys, I think of Kai Hurst, Cam Worth, that transition from one sport to the next and don't just transition, they do outstanding things. But thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
We answered it, buddy. We don't know.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
No.
Sorry, mate.
All right, next one.
Everyone's tough in their own way.
Absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, all of them have characteristics of toughness. But I have to say, like, I think in terms of the amount of hours and training, I think Ironman triathletes take the biscuit in terms of just what needs to be done. You know, in terms of the dedication and the hours that are up there.
It's tremendous discipline. Discipline to do it. Next one is from Jose Maria Ponce. Has his view changed these last years regarding carbs, especially for recovery?
Have my views changed? I would say, I mean, not in the past years. I think, I think if I look back from 2000 and when I first started on the low carb journey, which was probably like 2012 time, I was very low. You know, I was almost ketogenic, kind of low carb. But I think, you know, things have evolved, and now I think of things a bit more differently in terms of right fuel, right time. I still firmly believe that the world is going into this crazy carvolution state where I think the ingestion of carbohydrates is not proven to be any better. Even I know athletes are doing it and having success, but I think it's a brain derived mechanism and not a muscle derived mechanism that's and it's just perpetuating because more and more carbs are being taken. You get used to having more carbs. You get used to a high level of blood glucose. Your brain then perceives what's required as higher in terms of blood glucose levels. So you then start to require more during racing, and you feel better on that. But I would say no. I think in the last few years I've been I wouldn't say things have changed that much. I now do believe that the right fuel, right time, and partitioning carbs around recovery is important, and making sure you match the calories. I would say that one of the main things I've changed more than my views on carbs is my views on proteins. I think protein requirements in athletes are probably higher. And I think the main thing that you need to get right in terms of recovery is the protein. And we actually published a paper and we looked at what affects recovery in athletes. It was a machine learning big data set, and like carbs didn't have an effect, fats didn't have an effect. The protein that you'd eaten in the last 3 to 4 days had the biggest effect on how you felt and how you recovered. So my views on protein is now I think athletes should be closer towards 3 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. And I think that's the thing you need to get right before you get anything else right. And once you get that right, the carbs and the fats don't matter that much unless you're trying to push a very specific metabolism shift, right? In terms of if you want to get better fat oxidation, we know habitual diet plays a big part, and petitioning of when you taking carbohydrates is really important. So I would say not in the last few years, I haven't really changed my views, but from 2012 time, I would say I've definitely higher in the carbs and petitioning them around a bit more. Yeah.
What a great answer, mate. And Jose, I hope you just summed all of that up so well, buddy. And I think it's important that when you're a scientist at the end of the day, and great scientists are always questioning the knowledge that they have at the time, right? So it's not about ego or being right. It's about always questioning. And I love the way you dived into that in the sense of, look, there's a room for all of this, and it's the timing. And I think like we've done episodes where I think we've spent most of the episode talking about this, so I'm not going to do it to death right now. But that's been the big takeaway with our conversations has been there's a time and place for all of these things in an athlete, whether that's throughout an individual day or in any sort of micro or macro cycles that you're in.
And I think, and I was talking about this to someone the other day, and I think one of the main dangers, and I'm always very cautious of, is I believe age groupers comparing yourself and your behaviors to what professional athletes are doing, like your Christian Blumenfelds, for example, whoever. I think that's the most dangerous thing you can possibly do, because you're comparing yourself to a total outlier of an individual.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it always comes back and says, oh, the athletes are taking 120 grams of carbs per hour. It's really beneficial. Look what Tadej Pogačar is doing. Look what Christian Blumenfeld's doing. But I mean, you telling me that you're anywhere close to their physiology, most age groupers? Of course they're not. They're miles away from it. They're total outliers. And so the only thing we can do is for guidelines for the majority, it has to be based off research and it has to be based off science, because they are by default averages and for general pop and for the whole population. So we do still need to look at that and not just go, oh, look, these professionals are doing 120 grams, because it's not comparing apples with apples. And I think that's where a lot of age groupers or amateurs can become unstuck, is just mindlessly following what the professionals are doing, whereas we should be a little bit more. Yeah, it's important. Anecdote's important. It drives research. I totally agree. But I still don't believe that it's the way forward for most amateurs. And that's where they're going. They're just following. Whereas, in the argument will often be, oh, the research is just behind what the professionals are doing. I says, well, no, I mean, there's been studies that have been done that looked at 30 grams of ingestion, 40 grams of ingestion, 60, 80, 90, 100, 120. And, it was worse after 73 grams per hour, in general people. And there's not much difference between 30 and 73 grams. So I think I'm not denying that it works. Some athletes who are like Christian Blumenfeld, who are clearly genetically gifted, it works for them. But I just don't believe that that's the blanket approach we can take for general guidelines, which is what a lot of nutrition now do, is they just throw these blanket guidelines based on what these professionals are doing. And I think it's a bit mad.
Well said, mate. I agree. Look at yourself, be an individual, figure yourself out. All right, next one is from Lewis Roberts. What's the best way to strip weight for someone transitioning from Australian rules football, especially if they hold on to muscle during Ironman prep? So they want to kind of lose all their weight, not fat only, muscle as well. How they get down?
Yeah. I mean, that's a hard question. I mean, obviously, to lose any weight, you do have to be in some type of negative energy balance, right? So, I mean, the best thing you can do is get a nutritionist who can help you, really. I mean, it's the thing with weight loss is you have to really plan it out and take a very, very long-term approach, and not rush it, because when you rush it, that's when you become you can become injured and overtrained and whatever it might be. So I mean, there's so many different ways you can do it, right? You can go, you can do time restricted eating. You could just do some sort of macronutrient avoidance. You could do calorie restriction. You could, there's so many different ways to do it.
But work with somebody. This is
work with somebody,
one of the things that, because I was a rugby player when I got into triathlon, definitely on the bigger side, and I think you were too, weren't you? But it took me 10 to 15 years of gradually changing my body shape by just simply doing the training and feeding the body for that specific training.
Yeah, I think that the main thing would be the most success that I often see is like I talked about just before is keeping your protein high and then manipulating the fats and the carbs. So I wouldn't, as an athlete, I think the worst thing you can do is just cut down on your protein and everything else. I think keeping the protein at a high level and then restricting and then reducing the calories from fat and protein is a far better way to do it, a far safer way to do it, a far healthier way to do it, and also it'll help you recovery. And generally, protein's a little bit more satiating as well, so it's a bit easier.
Yeah.
What you should look at is one of my good friends, Mickey Willardon. She's very good in this space, particularly when it comes to athletes. So I definitely look at Mickey. She has something called My 800, which is like it's a high protein diet where you just restrict to 800 calories a day for a short period of time. And she's had a lot of success with athletes doing that who are looking to shift weight. So I'd look at Mickey.
Great feedback. Love it. Next one, Braden Gray. Does being carb adapted versus we're staying on this whole thing right now. I could have ordered these big
HRV.
This is all you're going to get to talk about today.
No, it's like,
does being carb adapted versus fat adapted impact longevity differently? So a little bit different. We're talking rather than performance, and in the endurance space, and we're talking about longevity. So I think I'll read it again. So does being carb adapted versus fat adapted impact longevity differently?
Yeah, well, I was sort of to know what it means by carb adapted. I don't really know what that would mean, but I mean, I think like from a longevity perspective, like in terms of metabolic flexibility being more fat adapted, there's definite evidence to suggest that having lower and more stable blood glucose is the healthier, right? And it is linked with longevity. So if you are more fat adapted, obviously all those those variables will be more stable. When you're taking the carbohydrates, you won't get as much of the insulin spike and the peaking of the blood glucose. It should be more stable for the day. So I mean, mechanistically, I don't know if it's been actually proven that people who are more fat adapted or I guess if you're more fat adapted, I don't know how you would describe carb adapted, I guess. But I guess the carb adapted would be that you can, if you're fat adapted, you're therefore carb adapted. So I don't know if that's actually been proven, but it would make a good suggestion. And also even when you can get glycation, where the glucose attaches to the collagen, and it can cause wrinkles. And so if you're a bit carb intolerant, it can definitely, it's been shown that you can get glycation and cause worse skin as well. Mm-hmm. So I think there will be a little bit of evidence towards that. But at the end of the day, it's about what helps keep your blood glucose in a lower, not high, because that's obviously associated with a lot of metabolic diseases. So a lot of metabolic disease will be associated with less longevity. So I think there will be a little bit of evidence towards that. Yeah, if that's what you're if you can't really stabilize your blood glucose, so you do need to be a bit lower carb or a bit more fat adapted.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well answered, mate. You got more out of that. I was going to go, I don't know how we're going to do this one, but you did a really great job on that one. The next one is from, Emma Cachamali. I apologize.
Yeah, I know Emma.
Oh, great. Emma. There we go, Emma. So what are your thoughts on sodium in racing, sweat testing, and the benefits of sleeping in an altitude tent versus at altitude? Oh, there's a bit in that one.
Yeah.
There's more than one in that one, Emma. You're being greedy on that, but here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'll be a little bit unpopular with the sweat testing stuff, because I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan, and I don't believe there's not. I mean, look at the research. There's not much suggestion to suggest that sodium within competition is important. I think sodium outside of competition has more merit. So making sure that you are taking sodium with your recovery, with your food, you're salting your foods. But there's little evidence to suggest that taking sodium during racing is having any effect on performance. It's not really been proven. The problem with the sweat testing is that you're actually talking that those sweat tests can have anything from a 5 to 20% day-to-day variation.
Wow.
So when you're resting your hat on something that's that is that varied, that varies that much, mostly it's varied on habitual diet as well. So the more sodium you have in your diet, generally the saltier your sweat. It's not really a metric that you can hang your hat on when it's varying that much in the day to day. And of course, like I had this conversation, I had a message with someone the other day, and they were saying, it's very, you can easily reduce your sodium content of the sweat by getting heat adapted, going, so when you go to a hot climate and the sodium content of your blood gets less, you can reduce the amount of sodium in your diet. That's also going to suggest that you can drink more fluid with less sodium in it. That's also going to reduce the sodium content of your blood. So all these things, it's a very adaptable thing. And so you can't, and they say, well, is it genetic? Well, there's so much factors that are affecting it from a nurture standpoint. We don't know what's genetic or not, because who knows why it's that way, because someone can have lived a certain way for a certain amount of time. So therefore it's sort of like nature versus nurture, right? You just don't know when there's that many effectors on your sweat sodium concentrations. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we've had you on before, and you've talked about that, and I love that one because you're prepared to own it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, no, this is you haven't shifted your thought process on sodium. What about her?
I mean, I don't know. Like, people listening to this and like, it's quite unpopular for me to say that.
No, that's okay. Really, it's good. It's good to have a truth that you believe.
Really believe in it, but until personally, and we all come with our biases because we all come back to what we've experienced and what's happened to us. And I've done some sweat tests in the past, and it's varied every single day. I did it for 4 days in a row, and it was totally different every single day.
Yeah.
And the end is that sodium it's excreted because we're trying to remove it, which is why when we go to a heat acclimation, we sweat a lot more. So our body's like, well, we're sweating that much. I don't need to remove as much sodium in my sweat anymore because I'm sweating that much. I can do it in a much more gradual manner. Whereas when you're in a cold climate and you're eating a lot of sodium, when you sweat, you remove much more sodium because your body's like, right, I need to take this opportunity to get rid of the sodium. It's basically, it's just excreted because we have, when we have too much of it. So, and there's also internal sodium stores and the whole shebang and the whole rest of it. So, yeah, don't massively buy it. And like, if you ask me for my career, how much sodium I took in all of my Ironmans, I have absolutely no clue at all, because I've never paid any attention to it because I felt I haven't had to.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Great answer, and I think one we again look into it yourselves. But I think you've got somebody here that spent a lot of time understanding themselves and understanding the research. And Emma also asks the benefits of sleeping in an altitude tent versus at altitude. I could almost answer that one, but you can do it.
I'm interested to see what Greg says. Okay. So when it comes to altitude, obviously very popular with athletes, a definite ergogenic boost. If you look at the research, it's quite clear that you need quite a lot of exposure during the day to have the real benefit. So typically, live high, train low is the best way to do it. So, live high, and then you train at a lower level to keep some of the main adaptations of being at a higher, at sea level, where you can keep the intensity. But it seems to be around 13 hours is how much 13 hours of exposure per day to altitude to get the real benefits. And unfortunately, the sleeping doesn't really get enough hours. So you can, of course, sleep in there and then do your work in there and try and get up to 13 hours. But if you're just sleeping 6-7 hours a night, it won't be enough to cut the mustard on most occasions. And also I do believe that those altitude tents are quite noisy as well, and I think it does affect your sleep and recovery a little bit. So that's also something to be a bit mindful of. I mean, the best thing you can do is do it properly, go up to the real thing and have a go.
Great answer. All I would add to it is, look, when you're adding in altitude or any of these things, just understand it's another massive stress on your body. So for us, we always approached altitude that we tended to want to get ourselves at least a decent base level of fitness first. And then we would often do that in Australia, and then we'd move back to Boulder, where our house was right at 6,000 feet. We'd go back and we do two.
So you were up quite high. What's that in terms of meters? 6,000 feet.
What is that? 1750 or something?
Okay, so it's not.
Is that right?
high.
Actually, somebody's going to tell me otherwise, but I'm trying to do the math. But it's not super high.
It's 1,800.
They call it mid-level altitude. Frank Shorter said it best to me once because he was our neighbour, actually, our next door neighbour in Boulder, and he said, Greg, we look at altitude that at 5,000 feet, we call it one increment, and then every 1,000 feet after that, we call it another increment. And so we would base our training on, okay, if you're doing altitude training at just one increment, and we would do that, Laura and I, when we would come back to Boulder, we'd spend 2 weeks, we'd avoid any intensity, reduce the intensity anyway. And then we'd go down to sea level at 2 weeks and do a race, usually a running race, and then come back and then spend another 4 weeks at really building each week. And by 6 weeks, we found we were starting to feel adapted to that altitude. Then we would have our altitude tent that we would, then we would go sleep at 13,000 feet and then train at 6,000 feet. But again, that was only for about 6 or 7 weeks, mid-July to end of August, to get ready for the championship season in September. And I could handle it so long as I was really fit before I started the altitude tent on top of living at altitude. And Laura would pace it out and maybe do 3 nights a week in the tent rather than sleeping 7. And I
mean, 18,000 feet, you're only talking, you're not quite on the SPO2 the
13,000 feet, 13,000, not 1,800, not 18,000 feet, 13,000 feet we were at.
Oh, 13,000 feet.
Yeah, what's that, about 3,000 meters or something?
Yeah, that's
no, it's a bit more, maybe. But but I would build it up slowly. Like we'd hop in the tent at first, and then and then slowly increase it. And I kept a very close eye on the oxygen.
Because Boulder itself isn't that high, is it? It's only
no. They call it mid-level or whatever. Like it's not super high. What it is great because you can ride up the canyons and you can get up to the peak-to-peak highway, which is 8,500 feet, and or 3,000 meters, and there's plenty of great running up there too. So you can go do your long runs up high.
Was it Mandigo Trail and stuff like that?
You got Magnolia, you got the Switzerland Trail, and then one beginning with R. Look, it's fun for playing around. We played around with it for about 10 years, always just exploring different ways to do it. And for me, I would just say anybody that's wanting to play around with Boulder or any kind of form of altitude, I like that 6 week window with at 2 weeks come down to a sea level to do something intense and then go back up a day later and do another 4 weeks. But I really like that 6 weeks. I don't know that you're getting maybe what you want out of a 2 to 3 week type camp.
Yeah,
which
3 weeks. 3 weeks seems to be the minimum.
Yeah. Try and extend it if you can. 6 weeks is ideal in my mind. I really felt I had the benefits kicking in at 6 weeks. Anyway.
Yeah, cool.
All right, next question is from Lee Shelvis. Would you prioritize strength and conditioning over the 3 other disciplines for an age group athlete who's short on time?
Definitely not.
It's an add-on. Get swimming, biking, and running.
Yeah, it's an add-on. Always. Yeah. I always have... I think this is one of my main bugbears of any person who's involved in strength and conditioning, like dealing with general strength and conditioners in the past, is that they really believe that their strength and conditioning is more, almost sometimes more important than swim, bike, and running. And unfortunately, it just isn't. I think,
I 100% agree with you, by the way.
And even as you get older, I think the strength side becomes more important for sure. But I think you can also get away with doing specific strength work if you haven't got I think I'm not saying strength work's important and you can do it, but if you haven't got the time to do swim, bike, and run, you're short, you're just doing 8 hours of that a week. You can't go to doing 6 hours and do 2 hours of strength. It's just not enough. But if you're up it towards the higher end, then by all means include. But there's a threshold where you just can't include it if you're not doing enough swim.
No, do enough specific strength work. I would encourage you to go grab a towel, put it around your ankle, and then put a pull buoy in. And tow that towel around swimming. Put in the big gear on the bike or ride up a mountain, and then run up a mountain if you need to. But specific strength, and then just for your mobility and stability, add in some strength and conditioning. But
yeah, pull paddles in the pool, big gear work on the bike, hill reps running, all those sorts of things. I think
it's the best way to do it.
Would be the way forward in it. But if you have got the time to do the strength work, then do it, and just make sure that it's you're in and out in 45 minutes if you are going to do it. And so my belief is that you should always come out of a strength as a triathlete. You should come out of strength feeling better than when you went in. You shouldn't come out feeling really, really tired. It should be complementary to everything else that you're doing in the swim, bike, and run. I mean, I once worked with an athlete, and the strength coach was having them in there like doing 90-minute strength sessions. I'm like, as a pro triathlete, ridiculous.
No. It's way too much. I never had the energy for it. I was exhausted. I don't.
Well, they believed that their strength and conditioning was the be all and end all for everything, right? So it's like you just can't have that.
You and I fully agree. All right, next one. David Hayward, what is the role of tech, apps, AI in coaching going forward? Is it possible to systemize training entirely through algorithms, or will there always be a need for one-to-one human coaching?
David's my assistant coach at Endure IQ. So
he set you up. He set you up.
He's being a bit cheeky. What's he? Answering that, putting in his own questions.
I love it.
So we have weekly webinars sometimes. Well, we have weekly webinars as part of Endure IQ in the squad. We have our weekly webinars, and if there's not enough questions, David will just start throwing in a few questions in there as well. So,
brilliant! Well, you got to answer it now.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think AI will ever replace coaches. I think athletes want human interaction. They want to know there's a human on the other side, and I believe that's really important. And if you look at the brew up this week, it actually was launched today, so you can. I have an article in there that talks about AI coaching that was written by my PhD supervisors, Marnie Bichette and Paul Lawson. You can anyone who subscribes have a read of that, because it's a really great article, and basically it says that where AI can be really helpful is that it can help us have better foundational understanding of what we're trying to do. So like many people who are taking lactates, they don't, they've just seen it on Instagram that people take lactates, but they don't really understand what it fully means. So maybe that can help with our foundational understanding. But also where AI, I think, can be really helpful is in some background analysis and helping us do, it might go in and look at like the durability of an athlete over a session and then compare it to other things and what that might mean. Whereas and then coaches can spend more time on the emotional communication side, because they're not spending the time doing their own analysis, because the AI can do that in the background. And I think that's where it can certainly have some legs as like almost an assistant coach to the coach.
Can I add something to this? I want to add my 2 cents. This is the world that I'm living in, spending a lot of time in this. I think you're very right in the short to medium term, and whether that's a year to 2 years, I 100% agree. I think with the race for AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which basically means it's now more intelligent than humans.
Not athletic greens.
Not athletic greens. No, big shout out to athletic greens.
I just think athletic greens.
Yeah, fair enough. AGI. And so what I actually think is, for one, I don't think we'll know when suddenly AGI is here. I actually think we'll be all kind of wondering what the world's going on. We won't know what's happened. But I think in a year's time, we won't know when we're watching or listening to something if it's real or not, right? I think we're almost, if you play around with Grok on X and you create your own images, we're seeing things that just blows you away.
Yeah.
And the videos are there as well. Plus now we can put voices into these videos. It's happening right now. I would suggest that where coaches, and this becomes even more powerful in the future, is in-person anything is going to be our most valuable commodity in the future. There's my prediction that it's not going to be, because we don't, Who knows if you and I are actually talking to each other in the future? I could be just talking to your duplicate, and I'm working with a company that are duplicating people right now, which is called Augmented Eternity, by the way. And it's a fascinating area where we can now duplicate people. And so you could actually be on this call talking to me, but it's actually your duplicate talking to me.
Yeah, I mean, you see that right now. I mean, even,
it's happening.
Like, obviously, I mean, it's even now with ChatGPT. Like, I have written a lot of content, right? So if you look at all the EnduroIQ blogs, all the articles I've written, all the publications I've written, there's a lot of my writing online, and you can just say, answer this question in the like Dan Plews.
Yes, 100%. Already can do it. Do it. Yep.
They can already do it. So, and it will answer it pretty much as I would answer it, because it knows what when there's that much content online.
Yeah.
So we're kind of almost already there, really.
Yeah, it's called perspective awareness computing. So it's the next layer above predictive learning, and all we got to do is create your avatar or hologram, and I can ask you a question that you've never answered before entirely. And even if it'll give me the best version of what you would have done. Yeah. And that's happening. It's actually already here. It's more like the world is not quite ready for it. These things are already, a lot of these things are already built, and it's a fascinating area. But I just want to go back and circle back to the question itself about coaching. And I actually believe anything we're doing around each other in person is going to become so valuable that having a coach on deck that you can see and the energy in between. I'm going to go all spiritual on us here, but there's this energy in between that I truly believe is going to separate us from. The only way to separate us from AGI is this energy in between. To be in rooms with people, to be connecting on an energy level. So fascinating area. I do believe your answer is 100% right. I think in the short term, it's a very valuable tool. But long term, scares the shit out of me, mate. I don't know. I'm spending a lot of time with people that are building these things. And the problem is, here we go. I'm really segueing big time now, is we're all racing. So the US is racing to be first to hit AGI. China's trying to race. And then within the US, you have all the big platforms from Microsoft, OpenAI, Meta, X, Amazon. Everyone else is building as quick as they can. They're building data centers right next to, and wanting to build small nuclear plants next to them to create the energy for them, because the amount of energy that these things need is huge. And all of them are saying, oh yeah, we have these. We're all putting security measures in place, and I feel like it's just verbal nonsense. I actually just think everybody's racing to be first, and it's like, is this a good thing? Sorry, mate. Sorry, I've gone down a rabbit hole.
No, it is a scary old world. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. I've got one more question for you from the audience, from Rodrigo Donalicio. What a cool name. What is the most common barrier for amateur performance, and how can it be overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the most common barrier for amateur performance is time. I think. I mean, not to be. I mean, I know that's a simple answer, but I think it's the truth behind it. And I think the way you overcome it is that, like we talked about in our last podcast, Greg, is that don't try and do too much at once. Find a goal, commit to the goal, go all in on that goal, and prioritize it. Don't try and go for that goal whilst you're trying to do other things at the same time. So don't try and go for a big Ironman goal whilst you're trying to grow your business and start a new family or write a book.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, then segment that time. Say, okay, for these next 12, 16 weeks, that's going to be my focus. I'm just going to accept that those other things are on the wayside, so I have the time to do it. And then once that's done, I'll reprioritize and pivot and counterbalance the other way. And I think for most amateurs, that's the problem. So I think doing that, and then once you have that in place, routine and good time management. Having a good routine is absolutely everything, and that's what allows you to keep focused. Is just making sure that your routine's in place and you write things down and you stick with that routine, and it really helps.
Mate, what a great answer. I got to tell you, that was spot on. Nailed it. I am going to ask you one last question, only because you brought it up and nobody else asked you. What can we do in the short term to fix our HRV performance, increase it?
Well, I mean, there's so many things you can do to
give me some really quick takeaway ones before I let you go.
The best and the most potent way to increase your HRV is endurance aerobic exercise.
Okay.
You know, and I think, and it's the best way you can relieve stress, right? Because, I mean, short term, obviously you have reductions in HRV, but long term it improves your HRV. So, you know, there's two things. I mean, there's one is the two things would be sleep and exercise are the two big rocks. And it makes intuitive sense, right? Because when you're very stressed, you're more sympathetically active, and it's either, you know, and what's sympathetic? It's like fight or flight. So your body, when you're in a stress state, what it wants to do, one or two things. It wants to move, right? It wants to fight or it wants to flight. So the exercise part is actually very important to relieve the sympathetic nervous system, which is why when you're stressed, exercise is the most valuable thing, because it's what your body's craving at that time, fight or flight. Yeah. So exercising is really important. And I think exercise and sleep would be the two things that you have to really try and nail.
Mate, I love it. Brilliant. I can't wait for your book to come out. We'll have to bring you back on for the book launch.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really looking forward to that. I always love our conversations. What's next for you? You know, you said you're heading off to Kona and everything else. You got
so I'm going to Kona with some of my age group athletes that actually leave next week, which is pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to that. So just like five of my age groupers, which I think, as we just talked about, is that in-person coaching is really important. And I think we're all really looking forward to that. And then there's Kona itself. So I'm going back then to do it for the race. I'll be around at the race with lots of athletes. And then, apart from that, then just trying to look forward to the New Zealand summer, to be honest. hoping to enjoy a bit of that. And I've heard there's going to be a Hyrox event here in Auckland at some point, maybe in the new year. So I'll train for that. I'll probably race in the Open. And then I'm going to try and do, if the Hyrox World Champs is in a convenient location, I'll probably have that as one of my physical aims for the year. Is I'll try and see if we can win my age group at the Hyrox World Champs or something like that. You're awesome, buddy. I love it. I love our conversations. I love these chats. And I love the fact that I often get you on a call. We chat for about half an hour, then we record for an hour 15 when neither of us get anything done, because I think we both can talk each other's ear off. But I really do. I appreciate you as a friend, and also just as a really great, knowledgeable person to have these conversations with. So I appreciate you coming on, buddy. No, thanks for having me on again, Greg. I always enjoy it. Yeah. All right. And now, where's the best people find you? Enduro IQ is the best place. Social media, the same thing? There's Enduro IQ on Instagram. At the Plews is my personal Instagram handle. Okay. If you go onto endurooiq.com, you can sign up to the Brew Up and also the TSS as well. Yep. I can give you the link for that page. We've also actually just launched it's a free calculator. So if you look on, I'll give you the link for that as well, Greg. And it's we created a calculator that uses lactate, VLA max, and a 5-minute power to calculate your thresholds and your fat max. Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, so that's a free resource for anyone who wants to use it. You just have to enter your email. And there's also like critical swim speed calculator, threshold FTP basic calculator done on 90%, not 95, and training zones based off your 5K run time. And it's just all in this one online calculator that we've actually just launched. So if anyone wants to check that out, I'll give you the link for that as well. Awesome. Yeah, go check it out. Enduro IQ, we can find it there. But mate, fantastic. Thanks everybody for listening. This is another great episode, Dan. I appreciate you, buddy. Yeah, thank you, mate. All right. See you, mate. Stay on the line. Bye.